And now please welcome to stage Kaspars Banga, Accenture Latvia Innovation Lead and New Business Developer.
Thank you. Actually, Kristaps, but okay. Hello, everyone. It was, I think, very interesting beginning of this Baltic Brand Forum, and we will proceed on the same dynamics. So we will tap into synergies, different partnership forms of the innovations, basically 50 shades of innovations. So welcome my panelists on the stage. Welcome Marita from Swedbank, FinTech Community Manager. Valdis Bergs, scale-up, startup, and I think very innovative company from Latvia. Liis, a friend of mine from Estonia, CEO of a startup which is now helping corporates into this bridging into the more startup mind. And Andreas from Baltic Sandbox, also founder, and he will give his opinion on what's happening in Lithuania and broader also on the Baltic stage. So welcome everyone, and let's probably kick off with Marita, with you. Can you maybe give us a short kind of intro of what is the innovation framework and how you boost innovations in the Swedbank?
Hi everyone, yeah, absolutely. So Swedbank is quite an old company, actually 200 plus years old. We work across Sweden and of course the Baltics, and I come from the innovation and strategy team there, which is based in Sweden, but we operate of course across all 4 markets. And there's 3 main pillars of how we work with innovation. So one of them is, of course, boosting innovation inside the organization. It's very, very easy for companies to hire an innovation manager and say like, listen, dude, you innovate and all of us will sit back and do things the way we always have. So that's a tricky part. So we have to actually bring tools of how to use innovation to all of the employees and different groups who might need to do something in, let's say, design thinking or some type of new project management or collaboration. Then the second pillar of how we innovate goes through something that might be a bit too techy, but it's called open banking, based on a new legislation that allows fintech companies to actually access your banking data. Of course, don't panic with your approval, to offer you new types of products. So let's say to offer you some kind of account insights or payment abilities. And this is based on APIs, which is basically for the fintech company and the bank to connect. It's as easy as putting you know, your charger in the electricity socket, which is very different from like long and complicated iterations in the past. And then last but not least, we have a pillar which works on collaboration with third parties or with fintech companies, where we try to introduce new products, but don't try to reinvent the wheel. Don't try to do it on our own based systems, but we focus on collaboration and also investing in startup companies through various different types of projects. Like, to give a couple of examples, we have a company called Mina Technologies in Sweden, where if in your bank application you can see all of the reoccurring payments that you make every month. So all of the Netflixes, all of the Spotifys, which is really cool because then with one click you can cancel that service right in that app without going to the company, etc. So little things like that are what like bring us a lot of customer satisfaction.
That's a very cool example. I actually wasn't aware. Does your strategy differs from this example from the Sweden and on the Baltic level?
Actually, no. Our team works across all 4 markets, but the thing is that if we look at Baltics or Sweden, for fintech companies, Baltics is a bit more complicated market to enter. Because unless you do everything in English, which a bank doesn't, then you have to do everything in 3 languages, right. Speak about 3 different types of providers. So usually the test or first market is Sweden. It's bigger and financially more attractive, but we do try to then bring the best examples down to the Baltics as well.
Thank you, Marita. So if we can ask you, Valdis, from not being yet corporate, but probably on the road too, because you're scaling very fast with your current main products and new services. So what is the framework of innovations, how you are company driving innovations and boosting this mindset and to make such a cool products and services?
We don't build frameworks. It's due to our no bullshit policy.
That's a good example.
What we do, we tend to provide the best service to our clients. And that's what drives us. And the main difference from actually a startup is that we don't burn money. And that's it. Mobily has been profitable since 2010. Mobily takes, after 3 years of eating a lot of investment, became profitable last year. So that's our principle, how we evaluate ideas. An idea can be as sexy as hell, but if the numbers say no, it's no.
So the business case rules.
Yes, yes.
Okay, that's a very cool, good answer. So maybe I can ask then Lise and Andres, you, as you have heard some examples, one from corporate kind of environment and one from the non-framework company, Mobily. So Lise, knowing your experience in previous life, also being in a SAB bank in Estonia as an innovation lead, and now running this as an external consultant for big corporations. So what is your change or pivot in your life, how you see these differences? And basically, once engaging now with your customers and corporates on this journey to transform to the more startup mind, is there differences? What are preferred strategies on this innovation kind of models?
There's already too much of things.
There was 4 questions, I think.
Yes, exactly.
but
I wanted to stop you.
But I tried to start from the beginning, unless you want me to speak for the rest of the panel.
Yeah.
Hi, from my part also, happy to be here. What was the first one? Why did I pivot? Second one was, what's the differences?
Yeah. So what's currently you feel the difference is being a kind of entrepreneur and now being entrepreneur?
Well, the difference is huge, because doing that from the outside in, being an innovation catalyst from the outside with the big companies, you can see a lot of different cases and different companies doing different things. If I think of the similarities or differences, each company has very similar challenges, but they approach it, of course, very different when we talk about innovation. One big difference or similarity that I see is that very often, and I don't know why is that, but companies fail to respond to the question of why do we want to innovate? Like this kind of taking 3 steps back and understanding, okay, why do we actually do what we do? Why do we pick that path? Why do we collaborate with startups, or why we don't? And why do we want to run internal accelerator, external, whatnot? And it reminds me, when talking about accelerators and these innovation units, have you heard of Skunk Works?
Yep.
Well, who hasn't? Then actually the story goes back to World War II, when US Army needed to develop a new type of jet fighter. And then they thought that it's a good idea to set up kind of an accelerator type of environment in a circus tent. Do you see where I'm going here? and they made actually a new airplane from design until the launch in like 147 days. It was used in Vietnam War and whatnot. That's where the Skunk Works comes from, because it was next to a plastic plant and it was a horrible smell in that tent all the time. I hope it doesn't smell in those innovation accelerators, but my point being, long story short, is that a lot of companies set up these accelerators as a separate units, and then they hope that they get their all like eggs in one basket, and it kind of cuts the deal. But actually it doesn't. So what I see often is, first of all, not responding to the question of why are we doing what we're doing, not understanding why we do the strategy that we do, what's the long-term goal, and secondly, then of course, if the top management is not engaged in doing these things, because I have seen that in a lot of cases, these innovation initiatives comes from or lands into the marketing department, which I think a lot of you can relate with. It's tricky.
Okay, so maybe we can address also this question already to audience. So later on, can you kind of post whether do you have a buy-in from your CEOs on the innovation agenda, or it's just on your as a marketing director's agenda?
Who has a buy-in? Raise their hands from the CEO, from the top level. We can talk about that later.
Right. So Anders, not doing a long question, but rephrasing the same question I asked Lee. So what are the pattern in Lithuania on the different engagement forms, skunkworks, teams, partnerships, accelerators, incubators, spin-offs? Actually, that's also one of the interesting questions I later on want to kind of elaborate more. Do you see a lot of spin-offs as a...
Yeah, hello everyone. Also nice to be here, and also nice to talk to the guys that are saying what I want to say, you know. And it's like already someone is answering it like, shit, you know, okay, you have to think about something else. But the disclaimer actually, from my point of view, is like I really love innovation and I really believe in the future. The problem I see, answering to your question, is I don't see many innovation in the Baltics. Basically, I have a feeling the problem is it's still in the marketing budget. It's something like a trendy word. Every board member, you know, in any big corporation heard somewhere in some conference, he comes back and he also wants to do something about it. Then they say, okay, we need to innovate. Okay, who can do it? Okay, let's hire someone, or let's try with the marketing manager, you know. Here's your budget, or at least allocate some money for this, do some events and try, maybe something will work out.
Usually there's no budget.
Oh yeah, that's why I'm saying, like, you take an existing marketing budget.
You should do a bootstrapping. Right?
Oh yeah, of course, in the corporation, right? Coming back to the beginning of the question, I don't think it's a very big problem. I just think we are just a bit behind. We are like some 5 to 8 years behind comparing to some Sweden, Germany, etc. Because those guys, they already have the R&D departments. Those R&D departments they have a very clear target for the company. Let's say all the teams or the board members, they are aware why the company is doing that. And the innovation itself, if we are changing the packaging, why do we call it innovation? It's not an innovation. Innovation is like when you take absolutely different path to some problem. And also I want to double up, and where is a problem? Why do we want to innovate? If there's not a single problem, so why do we do it? And coming back to the bank question, I love the PSD2. I love the fintech, because if not these two topics, we wouldn't be talking about the innovation in the big banks, because why would we, right?
But don't you see also the innovation agenda on the startup ecosystem, or?
Yeah, I do, and I think that's one of the main drivers in the startup ecosystem, because those young guys, they travel, they read, they look at those TEDx's, they follow the great minds, they understand the problems, they think that's a very big problem that needs to be solved. Sometimes I'm really joking and saying like, yeah, that's a very good assumption. You go out, you find 50 people, you talk about this topic to them, and you please come back to me and show me the results. If it really hurts the people, if they are willing to pay for that, at least they say that they are willing to pay for that, we can move on from that point.
I think we already tapped into kind of my next question, and it's again maybe to all of the audience. So what's your feeling about the overall kind of maturity of the innovation ecosystem? And by ecosystem, I mean what we already touched upon is corporates or big companies, startups, but also about, let's say, government, municipalities, academic sector, maybe something else I missed. So.
Yeah, I can start off. Actually, I think that if we look at innovation, and especially in the Baltic countries, if we look at the amount of population that we have and the resources we have, I'm not so negative. We're doing quite good. Although if you look at like a global scale of the most innovative countries, it's, you know, from Europe in the top we'll see Sweden and the Netherlands and Switzerland, and we're quite close to these countries, so we can hope to find collaboration. I think for the Baltics, in innovation, the word collaboration is key, both between the markets. I think the time has really passed for us to, you know, measure against each other. Although it's really fun to see who wants to recycle the most. I won't deny that the statistics are interesting, but
we can always go with Lithuanians to the pub, right?
Exactly, and also in terms of, let's say, branding our markets, I think Estonia has done an amazing job on how they brand their country and show their strengths. Lithuania is showing themselves as like a fintech hub really well. But the question is, who are we as a whole, and if we see ourselves as a whole? And innovation is happening, I think, also from the corporate and startup collaboration perspective. But if we look to the future, and this is good, you already mentioned Germany. I just came back from Munich yesterday, and I was listening to President Obama speak on also like innovation in the future. And one of the main things is that how will corporates and how will the academic sector foster innovation? Because we're sitting here, we're probably not the newest generation in the workforce, and we're probably not the ones that are going to meet the demands of the future. I'm talking 20 years, not that anyone should stress today, but I mean that how much are we putting back into the younger generations being able to move forward with the same level?
Yeah, it's about circular economy, right? So, yeah. Please?
Yeah, talking about when we zoom into the country-specific innovation ecosystems, then I think in Estonia, talking about, you know, startup ecosystem and corporate innovation ecosystem, it's a whole different world. Corporates are seriously lagging behind, and startups are like really going boom, somewhere flying over above our heads, right? Because when we look at the Estonian like good ecosystem ratio is when you look at startups per capita, which is in Estonia 5 times higher than Europe's average, which is Europe's average is 5. Estonia has 33 startups per capita, and when you look at the number that is per 100,000 people, and when you look at per unicorns per million people, then Estonia is ranking somewhere in top 3 also. So I think those two numbers really well characterize how well we are doing with startups. But I think my company needs to do a thorough survey on what's the situation with corporate innovation. But talking about the whole ecosystem, Estonia is so small, and I think that's one of our strengths, that everybody collaborates with everybody quite heavily and quite intensely. And the government innovation has followed kind of the private sector innovation, because the Skype mafia was the first to start the kind of global Estonian mafia movement, so to say, and producing a lot of unicorns and still producing them. And when I talk about collaboration, then my company is just today, we had a former Skype CEO doing a management board workshop in Telia, just to talk about hands-on agile transformation, not on a theoretical level, but like how has it been done, what does it team in a very, very detailed teamworks level. So I think these types of synergies need to be forged more and more to be able to understand, kind of learn from each other, and the collaboration aspect that you mentioned. It's not just like, sometimes the corporates are looking at the startups like it's like some foreign insect, like, what do you mean you don't generate any money? Then how is your valuation 5 million? But like, my father is the same. He's kind of old school entrepreneur, and he's about to make his first startup investment, and I'm a bit like consulting him on that one. He's like, so how do I go about it? They don't make any money. I'm like, I know. That's the whole beauty of it. Anyway, so a lot of potential there.
Yeah, but on the other hand, what Valdis mentioned, and maybe some comments on this still making money, because we know everybody knows this example about the WeWork, how you can fly high, but you can also go down very quickly if actually at some point there is no business case, right? So
it's not because of the business was wrong. It's like
when you look at it,
yeah, it was marketing, and it was a lot of mistakes. Like, give it a decent management, they would never reach the point. Can I just a bit comment on? It's a common thing for us as the Baltic states, and I really don't want to separate the countries because we're so similar when you look at the innovation and the startups. We always compare with the Germany, and we say like, oh, if we would be having these kind of budgets, and if those boards of management would understand what is startup and innovation. Actually, from one point of view, I really like our situation. The smaller we are, the faster we do things. And when we talk about the funding, just look around. There's so many amazing ideas being bootstrapped. Sometimes you don't need the money, you just need very good cooperation. And if you would be trying to explain a German startup that he has to come to a corporate to pitch so good, to upsell the future service and to manage them to fund you, German would say like, why should I do it? I'll just go and take the money because there's a lot of it, you know. But the beauty of it is when we are in the situations where it's not that easy to do something.
It's a frugal innovation.
Yeah, we try harder. And I remember I had a very interesting talk to the board member of the Burning Man, you know, the festival. And this guy was flying out of Lithuania, and he said like, I really like you guys here, you know, he has this very amazing voice, and it's like this, you know, and it's like, I love you guys here. I said like, why? Look at this Sweden, look at this Germany, what do they innovate? They don't innovate anything. They haven't created anything for 20 years, but you guys here, you're so fucking hungry. You're so hungry. You'll just tear off the Swedish companies, corporations, and they will be paying you money. We're getting there.
That's, I like your answer very much. So, Valdi, do you have something to add?
I think that eating all the Swedish food, it's a very hard work to get there. And where I agree that it's very easy to bootstrap, it's very easy to pilot here in Latvia. But the problem is that afterwards you need to go to Sweden, to Germany to sell, and it's a whole different thing. And what happens here, yeah, you come with a great idea, you get financing from accelerator, you even get some EU funding for the project, and when you've done that, you know only how to get the funding, you hire some bureaucrat, and you work only to pay the bureaucrat's wage. So it's also not right. So what must be done, the business case must be right. And of course you can do a lot with marketing, sales, and you can go on the best stages like we work, but at one point you just fall, and that's it.
So anybody wants to add? So life after Baltics?
Global. Obviously. Like
why not Africa? Africa, South America. We have zero knowledge about them.
Do you know how Taxify went to African market? By never visiting the place. They just did Skype interviews, which amazes me to this day, and they're very successful there. So global is the way. Don't be intimidated by Air Baltic plane ticket prices.
It's impossible until it's done, right?
So maybe you have, it's more maybe a question to Lisa and Andres. Can you name any good example of this partnership? You also said that it's kind of a good recipe for the scaling or going globally to kind of partner, not necessarily with big corporates, but maybe with some other industry players to kind of find new synergies and business models. For me as a Latvian, it would be interesting to hear any kind of good example, which could be as a roadmap or benchmark to some of marketing managers or next innovation managers here.
Yeah, if I may again, a lot. There's what I see in my daily work, there are very many models, of course, how this collaboration is happening and how deep it is. Very often what I see from corporate side, of course, they're a bit afraid of, we're not going to invest immediately into the startup. We want to collaborate with them. One of my clients, Estonian public broadcaster, owned 51% by Estonian state. They're very eager in being the kind of the...
Guess who?
Yeah, the innovator in that space, in broadcasting and IoT, and helping startups to validate some of the products for bigger corporates like Discoveries and like these huge players, global players. And that's a really cool angle to have. And they already collaborate with startups. One Estonian startup called Votemo is doing some interactive, basically you can vote on the TV screen via an app and participate in a TV show, for example. And they have pivoted together, or not pivoted, tested together already many times the product. So it's going really well in that sense. If we talk about investments, then of course there are investment arms to B corporates that deal specifically with that. In that sense, it's simple. Like if you do the decision as a corporate...
Your company wording is saying sandbox, right?
Yeah,
exactly.
There's a reason why we're called Baltic Sandbox, because we actually, we said in our core strategy, we want to connect, combine, and empower the partnership across the Baltic Sea. We start with the Baltics, of course.
Yeah, and my final point was that the only thing that I see that is kind of stopping the corporate startup successful collaboration is that they speak different language, and there very often needs to be an intermediary in between to understand both sides well, because the expectations are different. There are strengths and weaknesses on both sides, but it's like there are like blind spots, and the corporates don't understand what is troubling the startup, why they can't do some things they want to do, and vice versa. So there very often needs to be a translating body between.
Yeah, and then I would like to add more. In this place, actually, the very important role is being played by the consulting agencies. And I really see some of them, they're really shifting their approach from actually just helping with M&A deals or investment consulting. They're moving on to coming into the very high level in the big corporations, explaining where's the future, what are the trends, how's the company doing, discussing it, tackling some very important topics for the company, and actually helping them to at least start to understand where it could lead them to, and start from something. I know a very, very interesting company in Lithuania, Catalysta Ventures. I don't know why do they call themselves ventures, but they're doing an amazing job because they already do it for 2 years. They're working with very big corporates, with very rich companies, and they're trying to understand the problems they're facing and say, like, let's look at the innovation. Maybe we can do something there. Of course, at the moment, they usually, what they do the hackathons. But hackathons, it's a very interesting way, but it's, I have my also personal approach towards that.
I do it also.
But that's a very first level for the company staff to be included into the actual trying to create something or upgrade something. Usually they invite some big guys to talk, to look, to see how it's working, and that, I think that's a first step. Because another company, I know it's a startup, it's called debunk.eu, they actually, everyone knows the fake news problem. They created a very multi-layer solution, but they went to talk to Delphi. Delphi is a very big news outlet here in the Baltics. You should be here, of course. And I know that Delphi is also investing in some new solutions that could help to foster the future. And now they're so big that they're talking to NATO, they're going to United Nations, etc. And it wouldn't be done without a very strong backup of a company that started to believe and say, like, amazing solution. Let's try to see where will this lead us to.
That's a good example. Maybe Marit, can you add on this topic? There was a comment on from the startup world that there is some lack of understanding from the corporate side. So how you elaborate? Can you elaborate on this? Is it so? And probably again, on other hand, what are the things probably you missing from the startup sides?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think that the approach where a corporate hires an intermediary is amazing. In our case, our team is the intermediary. So we have that internal competence, but at the same time, it's a bit challenging because if you look at companies that have, I don't know, 17,000 employees, 60,000 employees, when a startup comes to you and offers a solution, connecting them to the right person in the company to validate that this is actually a problem is quite complicated. It's also quite complicated to extract really the biggest problems in the organization. Everyone has their own little pain, and and the big pains are a bit too global to, we should be more digital, and then, then it's a bit too big. I think that if we've run a couple of acceleration programs also with our partners Startup Wise Guys, and are going on a third one. And this isn't the only way that we look at startups. This is one activity in a big umbrella. We run a couple of co-working spaces, so a lot of different things. And the biggest difference in corporates and startups from my perspective is the speed. As a corporate, we are a bit too slow, and as a startup, of course, they want to jump right ahead. Yeah, next month. And then the thing is, so that needs to be managed. So I'm kind of, trying to hold one there and the other one drag closer. So very athletic job that I have. And the other problem is like if we look at what startups are lacking, especially if we're talking about the financial industry. Let's say we would implement some product X inside our internet bank or inside our mobile app. If this has only 5 guys behind it and something breaks down on their part, they, our customers will be calling us. They don't see it as a separate product. So it's a very high risk to collaborate with extremely young companies, and of course for the extremely young companies, it's very hard for them to get the first customer. So again, we return to this chicken and egg situation. You need experience to get the job.
Right. Valdi, you are not anymore a very young company, right? So you are on a scaling. And what is still your approach if you would like to, and you are doing a lot of new innovation services products? So do you only, of course, business case we understood is one thing, but how you actually get to those ideas? Do you kind of only brainstorm internally? Do you seek any vendors? Do you seek any partners? Do you do co-innovation with your customers?
We are very open to cooperation on a lot of different levels. From like top management level, we partnered up with Citadel Bank, and Citadel Bank is owner of 10% of Mobily. So we see a strategic alliance in the payment industry because, well, the bank has the technology which would be quite expensive for us to obtain, and well, if we have to choose, either we get a small bag and go to different pitching stages and get the money from investors and buy that, or we partner up with somebody who has that technology. And of course, the second way for us just seems more feasible. And the same is with different products and ideas. We currently work on a lot of AI-powered solutions for parking and security, and we are teaming up with companies who already have that knowledge. Because if we would invest just internally, it would take too much time. So what our approach is that we will always seek the most effective solution. Either it's internal and then we see what we can do with our internal resources, or it's external resources, and well, the management and the numbers will be the judge of that.
Thank you. I really like your answer, and this is one of the things I also wanted to raise here about the strategic partnership. So I think also for you guys, this is a very good place afterwards to kind of mingle and make new business models, new services. So I think this is a very good example. Not always fast and a lot of money makes sense, but the strategic partnership probably is much more valuable. So, as we're having the last 2 minutes, I also wanted to ask you a question in regards of the branding. What is the, let's say, weight and the importance of the innovations in terms of building a strong brand? Maybe.
Can I kick this off? I think branding, as I think also Lise from Bolt mentioned before, as such, as a sole thing, is not valuable much if it's not inside everything that you do, like from the product to how you lead the company, to what kind of people you hire, the culture, everything. So, and when we talk about innovation, then that we already mentioned that it's not something that should land on marketing people's table and then, like, you know, go do something with it. But it should be ingrained in the company's DNA, because the end goal of an innovation team should be that the innovation team is not needed. It's like the company is working in a way that it's creating new revenue, it's creating new products, services, doing it fast, doing it efficiently, and the brand is well perceived in the market and sustainable. So, yeah, that's probably my answer.
Yeah, and one more thing to point out, where do I see a problem? In the Baltics, we're still hungry, and our companies are just starting to grow to the level they can really afford something that is risky. Innovation is very closely connected to the risk. That's why they need the R&D departments, and they should give the money and say, play with it. We don't actually expect something to come out of it, but play with it. And in order to achieve...
freedom to fail, yeah?
Yes, and in order to achieve we are on the very good way. The ecosystem is amazing, co-workings, laboratories, university scientists. We're on a very good way, but we need more push, and from my cooperation, that's one thing. Another thing, we really have to agree about the funding and actually to give it to people that have a very open mind and they want to try to do something new. Because we cannot innovate if we go on the same path that we know. And I heard someone, very clever guy, saying, I said, like, when do I really want to innovate? I usually look at absolutely different fields and see how they deal with some issues. Because if I will be listening and talking to my field guys or my industry guys, I will never hear something new, because we're all in the same boat. Well, how can you innovate? So just a bit more braveness, a bit more money, and to actually believe and see what can come out of it. If we will not do it, so we will just be like looking after some big companies that innovate and trying to do something locally. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, yeah, but I really believe, and in my field, in Baltic Science, we see amazing scientists coming in with amazing ideas. The problem is no one is funding them. I said, like, how come? How come? It's too risky. Why do we need venture capital then? Right.
Following up on the branding and innovation on a country level, then I think Estonia is a good example in that, being strongly developing and knowingly developing the e-Estonia and digital society brand. So in that sense, for example, I see that my work is much easier when I go abroad and there's a local country brand helping me to open the doors. Because very often what happens is that when I say that I'm from Estonia, then the first question my client asks is, okay, tell me more, like, how do you do this digital society things? How do you vote online? How do you do these things? How did you even start with it? I'm like, wait, okay, I will tell you later. but that's the thing, you know, I think the Baltics,
opener, right?
The Baltics could create a similar kind of brand to help companies, individuals, startups, corporates, whatnot, to expand globally, because together we should be stronger, right? So that would even be a bigger brand.
Building brand is like building trust, and you cannot build trust if you don't do shit. So what we try to do, we try to keep our promises, and of course everybody makes mistakes. So if we make a mistake, we say we are sorry, we made a mistake, we will correct it that way, and that's it. So that's the no bullshit strategy.
But keeping transparent, right?
Yes.
Okay, last but not least then. I think for me, it's one thing is that you build the brand, and of course for us, especially in the banking industry, trust is very important. But at the same time, there's, for me, example, my target audience is actually the fintech companies and the third parties, to make sure that when they think of a bank that they want to work with, that they think of us. So a lot of the branding and marketing work that I do goes into very, very small, niche areas of communication. Because as a big brand, as a bank, you as a customer, you really want to see that the internet is working, the app is cool, the payments are fast. You don't care if we're doing an accelerator, an incubator, or any other of these things. The brand is perceived as innovative if it's actually, as you said, doing shit.
All right, guys, only 5 minutes left for questions, so please go on with that.
Shoot.
No, you have a question, man.
Okay.
At the monitor from, yep.
Okay.
Take a look then.
So let's start with the first one. In which industries do brands have the biggest innovation gap, need to invest more innovation brand? So maybe kind of...
I'd say the ones that have the lowest salaries. Honestly, let's look at those old traditional industries that we know from the old ages and see what happened there. Because all the emerging industries that we see every day, it's not a problem. They will do something new.
Transportation, education, definitely. Yes, in old industries. Went away the question. I wanted to comment on the last bit that who need to develop the innovation brand. You need to develop the company, not the innovation brand.
In relation to that, there is a question from the audience, as here is a lot of marketing people. So if this topic is so hot and there is a need of a help, marketing agencies are saying, so why nobody approaches marketing agencies on the innovation topic?
I can answer. I dealt this question yesterday. You cannot say no one wants to work with. Actually, at least in my company, we do, but we want to establish a very clear partnership. What do I mean by saying partnership? We always get very good ideas. We see the startups that are coming in just to consult. Maybe we are not working with them. We can always recommend. The problem that I see with marketing agencies is usually they sell the team of salesmen and they instantly try to grab. What do I see in Lithuania changing? Actually, agencies start to work on the revenue share basis, which was a very big surprise. Yeah. And they actually offer it to the startups. They say, like, we will help you to get more funds coming in, but you share with us. I don't know a single startup that would say no. The problem is, okay, we will do, the classical this plan. We will do the analytics. We will check your marketing strategy. Then we will spend 20 hours thinking
your budget. Yeah?
Basically, they'll do the creative work. No, a startup needs money now. It's usually the problem. They need the money now. If you can help them, work on the revenue basis, so revenue share basis, so it's going to be awesome.
There was one question to Valdis about, I'm losing it, but the question was about if your speed is such a kind of good in innovations, so why the governments are lacking on this welfare kind of new solutions? And so I will read it through. So what are the main reasons why governments are so far behind the innovations when it comes to welfare and city planning and management?
Well, there are two main reasons. One is that you need to change, for the government, you need to change the way you're thinking, because the traditional digitization process is that, well, you used to have a paper letter and get a lot of stamps and signatures there, and the letter was circling somewhere in the corridors. And with the first steps of digitization, well, it's not a paper letter anymore. It's an electronic electronic document. But, well, that's shitty digitization, because you need to change all the processes to have the best out of it. And the change of processes is hard. In welfare, you can introduce whole automatic payments. But if you do that, then a few guys and a few accountants don't have any more the big red button pay, and their power is taken away, and of course they are afraid from that. And the next issue is prioritization, that always in the government everything is in lists of priorities, and if the people who vote for you, they want a park and a road, or you see that, well, it's cheaper to give him that than to have like a sustainable change of the processes, of course they will go for the fast goal. And it's a very, very slow process, how you talk and you change the way you're thinking, and that's the only way.
So we touched about you touched basically about the thinking, about the mindset, and there is also a question about, so what are the critical skills, not all specifically on the hiring, but in the team to drive innovations, whether different maturity stage, but anyway, what are the critical kind of skills?
Was that a question to specifically someone?
No, I think you can, everybody can cover your specific kind of geography.
I can kick it off really fast if somebody stops hitting the pen.
He's missing soft skills.
In my company, if I'm talking about my company, then the thing is mostly...
Just one top skill each.
Yes. Fast, super fast generalist.
Okay, Valdi. So top one skill.
You want to do your job really good.
Excellence in what you do.
2 for me, curiosity and perseverance.
And the person should never agree on what is happening. He should want to change it.
I'm adding humor.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much. Thank you.